This is the online lecture to accompany Chapter 14 in your textbook. I highly recommend you read Chapter 14 because there are many important ideas, theories, concepts, and examples that I simply don't have time to address. You can stop, pause, and replay this recording as often as you wish. All right. Let's talk about visual aids. Now, I do require visual aids for your speeches, and that's because visual aids have a lot of advantages. And I'm not just talking about any old visual aid, but effective, well thought out and well incorporated visual aids have many distinct advantages. The first one is clarity. In other words, it helps to make your ideas, the points you're trying to get across, clearer and more understandable to the audience. It also helps your audience maintain interest in your topic. If they're doing nothing but listening to you, their mind may start to wander, but if they also have something to look at as well, then it's likely that they're going to maintain some level of interest in that topic. It also helps them to retain that information. A visual aid well implemented in a speech can actually help the audience remember the ideas that you want to get across to them. And that can help with your credibility. Also, it can help to make you more persuasive than you would be without a visual aid. So let's talk about some of the different types of visual aids that there are. The first type is objects, and by objects I mean actual things themselves. Now, when might you want to bring in actual objects? Well, let's say you're doing a demonstration speech and you're trying to teach us how to do something. Then maybe you can bring in some of the materials that you would use to create this thing, whatever it is you're trying to show us how to create. So if you're teaching us how to paint a room, you might want to bring in some of the tools and implement and different types of paint, that kind of thing, so that we can see them. Now, it needs to be logistically feasible to bring in the actual objects themselves, because if you're talking about aircraft carriers, I don't think you're going to get one through the door. Even if it's impossible to bring in an actual object, sometimes a model of that object will do. So if you have a model of an aircraft carrier, then you might want to bring that in so that we can see what one looks like and you can point out the different parts of it. You can have models that are smaller versions of the object itself, larger versions of the object, or even same size. Let's say you're doing a speech trying to get people to stop smoking, and you bring in a model of a set of lungs, and one of which is a perfectly pink and healthy lung because that person didn't smoke, and the other side is a black and nasty looking lung from a person who smoked for years. It's the same size as an actual set of lungs. So it could be the same size, it could be larger, it could be smaller, depending on what it is you're trying to show us. So objects and models, if they are logistically feasible, make very good visual aids. Now, maybe what you want to show us is better served by giving us a photograph or a drawing. Anytime you have photos or drawings, you need to make sure that they are big enough for the audience to see. So that Polaroid that your mom took of you when you were 5 years old, that's probably not going to be very effective because it's too small for the audience to see. Even an 8x10 may not be big enough for the audience to clearly see what it is that you're talking about. It's not a very good idea to pass things around the audience, because once you've handed it to an audience member and told them to pass it around, you really have lost control of that piece of information. So you have no idea at what rate it's going through the audience. You really don't want to pass things around. Most photos these days are digital. They're not always, but you can certainly scan and save them as JPEG files and then show them on the monitor or the projector, or you can put them in a PowerPoint presentation. You can use them on Windows Picture Viewer. There are similar programs that will open and display your photographs. But always look for clear photos or drawings in which the thing you're talking about is large enough for the audience to see. For instance, this particular photograph, if I were talking about coral reefs, this would be an excellent picture to display because it's very clear what the coral reef is and how it's constructed. But if the subject I was talking about is one of those little tiny yellow fish, there, then this would not be a good picture because you really cannot see that clearly. You'd have to get a much more up-close picture of that fish in order for it to be an effective visual aid. This is the end of part 1 of the online lecture for chapter 14. Please close this window and open part 2.